Hello, creatives. Welcome to part 2 of my 12 steps from resistance to creative flow. So, if you haven't heard or listened to part 1 yet, please go back to episode 6 and listen to the 6 steps that I went over. Those were the 6 steps out of the 12 that I went over, and I also gave you an overview on resistance and creative flow. So before you finish up here, so that it would make more sense to you when I go through the remaining 6 here in this episode. So I encourage you to do that. And also here in this episode, I'm going to post a link to where you can download those 12 steps. So you can download it and print it out and have it in front of you if you ever need to refer back to it. Okay. So let's do a recap. These 2 episodes are about really helping you develop the muscle and the courage to navigate the creative process and face resistance with trust and confidence. And I really think it's important to develop that muscle with resistance because, like I mentioned before, resistance is just going to be part of the creative process as well as part of your life and can come up in different ways. So I'm going to recap in terms of the benefits of flow. And I mentioned before that being able to get into the flow really helps you to develop some positive emotions like feeling fulfilled, giving your artwork and your creative activity more meaning, more depth, giving you hope, and also experiencing pleasure and a sense of calm when you're creating. It also increases your motivation and your energy. It enhances your creativity. The more you create with a positive experience in flow, the more creative you feel. So those were some of the benefits that I mentioned before, but I also want to talk about why it's so important to access this flow state. First off, before I go there, I do want to mention, do not expect yourself to always access that creative flow state. It doesn't always happen, and that's okay. And also don't expect yourself to do these steps perfectly because it is about developing the skill, and part of developing that skill and that muscle is it means that you're not going to do it perfectly each time. And also that giving yourself permission not to expect to be in that creative flow each time you create. Because we don't always go into that flow state for whatever reason. And that's not a reason to get down on yourself if you don't get there or get into that flow state. But one of the things, additional things I wanted to talk about in terms of what we get out of being in the flow is that we really, it really gives us an opportunity to connect more deeply to our true, authentic creativity, which helps us to connect more deeply to our true self and who we are. So that's something that you can also access when you're in that flow. It's also an opportunity to tap into that inner wisdom that leads you to a stronger sense of where you want to be in your life, what you want to achieve, what you want to manifest, who you want to be. So when you're in that flow state, you're connecting to those parts of you, that true essence of who you are, and also you're connecting to your intuition, and there's some power. There's really a powerful benefit of being able to connect to that intuition. So I want to talk a little bit more about when you're connecting to your intuition, especially your creative intuition. You're in that flow state. That's also helping you to sort of just flow effortlessly in the creative process is because you're operating from that intuition. And that's why you're creating effortlessly. That's why it's flowing, right? You're not getting into the overthinking, and you're not getting into the second guessing, the pre-planning. When you're in that flow state, you're actually tapping right. I mean, you're really plugged into that instinct and that intuition that is giving you direction and information. That I believe it's your intuition's giving you information on what decisions to make during that creative process. So that's something that is important to not only be aware of, and maybe you're not so much aware of why you're just effortlessly creating during flow, but because you're accessing your intuition, you're actually developing that muscle to know how to tap into and listen a little bit more closely to your intuition, which I believe accesses you to your inner wisdom. So, it's important to see how this isn't just about when you get into creative flow, you are more productive, or now I can bang out 10 pieces, or now I can really get some progress on my body of work. Yeah, that is one of the benefits, but it's also important to see how creative flow can actually fulfill you, personally in your transformation, in your development individually, how it helps you to connect to that inner wisdom and guidance. Because I know for me, sometimes it just feels like when I'm in the flow, I feel like I'm even tapped into a higher power, and creativity, what I call creative spirit, just is flowing through me in that creative process. So for me, it's a spiritual process too. It's a spiritual experience. It's almost, and I think this is why when you get to that place of creative flow, you feel like, wow, this place is so cool. This is where I feel like I belong. And, that's the feeling of wholeness and oneness, right? Everything seems to make sense. So keep that in mind. Think about how creative flow can even be beyond just feeling like you're being productive creatively. So I wanted to go over that before I go over the remaining 6 steps. So step number 7, we left off with step number 6, which was letting go of control, being able to let go, being able to recognize when the piece doesn't want to go any further, or maybe you're at a place where you need to take a break, and how that can come up during the creative process. Even though you're in the flow, sometimes resistance can come back up, right? So, so number 7 is stay open to uncertainty and the unexpected. So part of why resistance comes up is because there might be an element of uncertainty that we're having to face. And that uncertainty can make us anxious. It can make us feel like we don't really have a ground to stand on. We don't have a game plan. It can make us doubt ourselves or doubt our process because we don't even know where to start. So the uncertainty, recognize that the uncertainty can make you feel a little bit it can make you feel vulnerable because we don't know what to expect. And that can rise up our level of anxiety around the resistance. So being open to, okay, I may not know where I'm going with this, or I may not know where to start, but I'm just going to go through the motions. Like remember with last episode when I talked about committing to showing up for 10 minutes, just sit there and then going through the motions for 30 minutes. It's like when you go through those first two steps, and then you also stay open to the uncertainty, meaning you don't necessarily always have to have a game plan, but you just stay open to being present, to being open to what may just unfold if we follow our curiosity. That was step number 5. Following our curiosity, being okay with just being present and spontaneous. Um, Sometimes when we do that, the unexpected magic can happen. So, in other words, accidents happen that end up being really cool. We're like, ooh, I didn't even plan that, or I didn't even expect that. And then something magical happens, and that kind of ignites or inspires us even more creatively. But we have to remain open to that uncertainty and not look at uncertainty as a bad thing, as a scary thing, but that there might be some magical gems that come from that place of uncertainty if we allow ourselves to stay open to that. Which leads me to the next thing. Step number 8. Practice courage versus fearlessness. So, I've heard a lot of other experts talk about fearless creating, which I get what they're trying to say. But there's something about the word fearless. It almost sets you up for this high expectation of, well, then I shouldn't have any fear. I should be fearless. I should just go in there, create something without fear. So then we see fear as a bad thing, that we should not have fear when we're embarking on a project. We should not have experienced fear about something that we want to succeed, to come out beautiful, to be a beautiful, amazing creation, that we are not supposed to have fear around that. And I'm going to talk about the opposite of that, because I believe fear is not necessarily a bad thing to have. Fear is just an indicator. Not only is it a natural human emotion, but it's an indicator that this thing that you want to do is so important to you, that means a lot to you, that the value in this thing, whether it's art journaling, writing, doing watercolor, singing, creating, anything. There's going to be an element of fear that comes from that. And of course, the fear creates the resistance, right? So I'm all about, let's leave that statement out the door, fearless creating. No, let's talk about courage. Having the courage to create. Because the definition of courage is being afraid of it, but I'm going to do it anyway, right? I'm going to face up to it, even though I have a lot of fear and apprehension and uncertainty. I am going to try to find the courage in me to face up to that and create anyway. No, I may not know where to start. I don't know where this project is going. I don't feel 100% confident in my skills. But I'm going to have the courage to show up, go through the motions, and create anyway. To me, that sounds so much more productive than fearless creating. So Number eight is very important. I love number 8. Practice courage versus fearlessness. So, and again, you don't always have to be 150% courageous. If you even have an ounce of courage to just show up and sit there at your creative space for 10 minutes, that takes courage. Remember, to be creative, to honor the part of you that is really desiring deep down inside to be creative, to do something creative, takes courage. Because we have a lot of obstacles sometimes to face. We have a lot of predetermined ideas of what creativity is, predetermined ideas of what considered artistic or talented enough, preconceived ideas that the world tells us is considered art or artist, and a lot of that, including our own personal stuff like the self-doubt and self-criticism that comes up. We have all that working against us. So it's vital to have that courage. It's going to be necessary to have that courage. And even, like I said, a little bit of courage counts. A little bit of courage, even if you sit there for 10 minutes and show up, that takes courage. Now here's a quote for you by actor Alan Alda. Be brave enough to live creatively. The creative is a place where no one else has ever been. You have to leave the city of your comfort and go into the wilderness of your intuition. You cannot get there by bus, only by hard work, risking, and by not quite knowing what you are doing. What you will discover will be wonderful. Yourself. So step number 9, allow yourself to be immersed in the flow. Now, once you get to that place of flow and you lose a track of time, you're deep in it, you're not even distracted anymore by the outside world, you are fully immersed in the creative process, and things are coming effortlessly, and the decisions you're making seem to be working perfectly, in sync. Everything seems to be aligned. That feeling can sometimes feel very overwhelming and maybe even intense. And you might okay, wait a minute, what's going on here? I've had moments like that where, whoa, wait, this is freaking me out because everything is aligning. The decisions I'm making just seems to work perfectly. Like, what's going on here? It can feel intense and overwhelming. And I say, that's okay. That's okay to get lost in that place of immersion, that place of flow, that place when everything is in sync, mind, body, spirit, creative spirit is all in sync, and everything that you're creating is just gorgeous and beautiful, and you're in this bliss. It's okay to be there. What I'm saying is, when you feel maybe overwhelmed or a little taken back, take a deep breath. Just pause and just take a deep breath in, and now take a couple of deep breaths in and get centered and trust the process and trust yourself that you can actually be a conduit for whatever is happening, the creative energy that's flowing through you. This is part of who you are. And sometimes that kind of this is what happens when you remove all those little obstacles of resistance and you hit that place of flow. This is what happens. It's like a river sometimes. I've had those moments when I would sit down to write, and all of a sudden I'm like, where is all this coming from? I don't know where all this is coming from, but it's just flowing, and I can't write, I can't type fast enough or write fast enough. I've had those moments, and if that ever happens to you, I'm here to tell you that's okay. That's when creative spirit is just really giving you that place of higher vibration. You are just you're being open to the creative process, and you're being open to that part of you that has been wanting to be creative. So that's pretty exciting, and maybe your soul is excited. So you'll feel really, energized about it and inspired. So I wanted to definitely bring that one up. So step number 10, embrace your creative potential and creative power. So part of resistance can be self-doubt, especially if you're if you're new to this and you're new to navigating the resistance and you're new to the art practice or whatever art activity or creative activity that you're doing, and you feel a lot of self-doubt in what I also call the beginner's mind, right? You're new to this, you have doubt, but you're excited about it and you want to keep doing it and you want to keep learning. That's totally fine. You give yourself permission, and I go to back to step number 4. Practice self-compassion and loving kindness, especially if you're a beginner, especially if you're learning a new medium, a new technique. Give yourself, the permission to be with beginner's mind. But part of that too is embracing your creative potential, meaning the potential is there. And the fact that you have had the courage to take these steps to try to bypass resistance and to get there, that means that your creative self is important. You're honoring that part of you. You're honoring the creative power that's within you by saying, I'm going to do this anyway. I got a lot to learn, or I'm a little clumsy at this. I'm not sure what I'm doing, but I'm going to keep doing it because this is what I love and I can feel that this is where I'm supposed to be. So it's important to own that part of you and to really honor that artistic self, part of your artistic self, because I think that is important to recognize that sometimes the resistance is about, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just so new at this, or I'm not really an artist, right? I can't call myself an artist, or I don't create real art. I've heard that also. I don't create real art. I'm not artistic enough. I didn't go to art school. All that stuff can create resistance, and you really need to recognize that self-talk, that also is part of not really embracing and honor the creative part of you and that artistic part of you that is already exists in you. So I think that's really important. Embrace your creative potential and your creative power. All right, so step number 11, practice self-care. So recognize when you're feeling drained. It may not be the best time to be creative. Although you're creating, although when you're creating, you feel re-energized and maybe, maybe I feel a little tired, but I'm going to create anyway, and I'll get some energy from that. Sometimes your body's telling you, maybe you should do self-care instead. You need a nap. Maybe you didn't get enough sleep the night before and you need a nap. Maybe you need to get your body moving. You need to exercise. It's important to recognize self-care, because what happens is if you go into the creative process with it's almost like going a little bit half empty, resistance can grab hold a little bit tighter or take advantage of that. I am using resistance as an entity. It's the trickster. But I'm just saying that if you go into the creative process already feeling kind of vulnerable, tired, maybe you're down, or maybe you just have an off day, you're more vulnerable to resistance kicking in. And you want to really be mindful of that. That maybe the desire to create is there, but there's a part of you that is tired and needs a nap, or maybe you need to get something to eat first. So I want you to really think about practicing self-care before you go in and deal with the resistance, or go in and try to immerse yourself in the flow or get to the place of flow. I used to think when I first started my art career as an artist. I mean, I've been pretty much an artist most of my life, but I've been a different type of artist. And to do fine art was different than graphic design. It was a very different type of art. And I did arts and crafts, and I still do, but I really wanted to create a significant body of work that represented all these ideas that were floating in my head for years that I didn't take time to execute. And I also wanted to self-teach myself mixed media. So when I started, I would go into my art studio and it was like a battlefield. I mean, it was talk about I'm not just going into this wonderful, blissful state of being where I'm just having so much fun creating. I had to go through the process of sort of duking it out with my inner thoughts and the inner dialogue and the stuff that was telling me, why are you doing this? You're wasting your time. You should go look for a job, a real job, or you think you're an artist. Oh, that was a repeated statement that was going on in my head. You think you're an artist. You think you can create art, and we all have that. And it was like a battlefield for me. So over time, I actually learned to turn that down, the volume down. But I really needed to, take care of myself, make sure that I had enough sleep, made sure that I, was eating right. Because sometimes it's easy to forget to eat when you're creating. Because that sort of psychological battle that was going on, you really need to be in top shape sometimes. You don't want to be too tired, too hungry, right? Too lonely. All of those things that you hear. This is similar to my, since I'm talking about 12 steps, HALT. That's really important to remember. That also applies to when you're needing to face resistance and into the creative process. So I really wanted to emphasize step 11, practice self-care. All right, we're on the last step. Trust the process, trust you. So as you practice these steps over and over again, in the midst of when you're hit with resistance, you will get better as you, like I said, you're going to strengthen that muscle. You're going to get better at trusting the process, which means you're going to get to a place like, okay, I've been here before, I get it. Resistance, I'm going to show up, go through the motions. You start creating. Oh, resistance comes up again. That's okay. It's expected. That's what happens. I know how to navigate this, right? You got the 12 steps to look at. You start to have enough experiences. Again, I want to go back to what I said in my last episode. You're carving out new neurological pathways in your brain through experiences. Enough experiences coming out on the other end of the creative process of resistance. Okay, I got through that. Cool. This isn't perfect, but I love what I came up with. You do that over and over again. You're strengthening that neurological pathways in your brain. You're strengthening that muscle. You are strengthening the trust and the confidence within yourself as a creative being. I cannot emphasize this enough. That's why I tell my students, you gotta show up, even though resistance is there, even though you don't feel like it sometimes, or you procrastinate it. I haven't created for a week. Why bother? Show up. Go through the motions. You need to practice it over and over again so then your brain catches up. It's going to get easier. When it gets easier, you start getting more confident. You're like, okay, I get it. Been there, done that. You don't go back to that place of, or regress back to that place of, oh, I'm a crappy artist. I'm not talented enough. I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, and trust me, you go back there several times, but what I'm saying is you'll go back there less times as you get better and strengthen that muscle. You get more confident, and then you really understand that, this is part of the creative process. I've been here. I know what to do. I'm going to practice self-compassion. I'm not going to be hard on myself. I'm not going to criticize myself, right? This is so important in terms of being able to get to a place so that you're honoring that creative part of you that is always wanting to create, always wanting you, and calling you to that place to honor that creativity. So that's why I wanted to end on step 12. Trust the process, trust you. Because if you follow these steps and you repeat them over and over, you're going to become much more confident and trusting in yourself. So, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed these last two episodes. Again, remember to download the PDF so you can print this out and have the 12 steps in front of you. I really encourage you to try to practice some of them. Remember, you don't have to practice all of them at once. You can take a few and just practice them little by little as you begin to build up to it. But I wanted to give you 12 steps that you could actually pick and choose from so that you had something to work with whenever you're hit with resistance. And so then you can get to that place of creative flow. So thank you for listening. I appreciate you listening and watching my YouTube channel. I hope that you will continue to create and don't let resistance get in the way of your true creativity. There's always a way to get past that, and there's always a way to get past the self-doubt, the insecurity, and all that stuff that makes us, give up too soon. And that's part of my hope for you, is if you're at a place where you feel like you just want to give up on your creativity, don't do it. You deserve to be the creative being that you came into this world to be, and you deserve to create and express your artistic spirit and your creative spirit, and you deserve that journey to see where that will take you. So I'm here to encourage you, and I hope that these episodes will give you some tools to get through the journey, your creative development. All right, so stay creative, and I look forward to seeing you next time and in my next episode. Thanks. Bye.